My grandmother once told me she could buy everything on her grocery list, stop for an ice cream cone, and still have money left over from a $10 bill. I laughed. She wasn't joking. When I dug into how mid-century families actually shopped, I discovered a whole world of budget magic that we've completely forgotten. And some of these strategies, they're more powerful now than ever. Picture this. It's 1955, and you walk into your local grocery store with a crisp $5 bill in your pocket. You're not just buying a few items, you're filling an entire cart. Sound impossible? Welcome to the golden age of grocery shopping, where budgets stretched further than you could ever imagine today. In the mid-20th century, grocery shopping wasn't just about picking up food. It was an experience, a social event, and honestly, it was budget magic in action. Let's dive into what made those vintage grocery runs so incredibly different from what we know today. First, let's talk numbers, because they're truly mind-blowing. In 1950, a gallon of milk cost around 82 cents. A dozen eggs, just 60 cents. A pound of ground beef would set you back about 63 cents, and a loaf of bread was roughly 14 cents. That $5 bill we mentioned earlier could actually feed a family of four for nearly a week. Today, that same $5 barely covers a coffee and a pastry at your local cafe. But here's where it gets really interesting. The value wasn't just about lower prices, it was about purchasing power. The average American worker in 1950 earned about $60 per week. When you do the math, groceries consumed a much smaller percentage of the household budget compared to today. A family could comfortably allocate 20 to 25% of their income to food and still have plenty left over for savings, entertainment, and other expenses. The grocery store itself was a completely different beast back then. Most stores were smaller, independently owned operations where the grocer knew your name, your family, and probably what you bought every week. There were no massive superstores with 47 varieties of pasta sauce. Instead, you'd find a curated selection of essentials, locally sourced produce, and personal service that made every trip feel special. Store layout was practical and straightforward. You'd walk in, grab a basket, not those massive carts we push around today, and navigate through clearly defined sections. The butcher would cut meat to order right in front of you. The produce manager would hand-pick the best fruits and vegetables for regular customers. And here's something wild. Many stores still offered credit accounts where trusted customers could buy throughout the week and settle up on payday. The products themselves tell another fascinating story. Brand loyalty was fierce because there were fewer options. Families stuck with what they knew worked. Campbell's Soup, Wonder Bread, Coca-Cola, and Kellogg's cereals dominated the shelves. But portion sizes were noticeably smaller, packaging was simpler, and the ingredients list was refreshingly short. No artificial colors, high fructose corn syrup, or unpronounceable additives, just real food. Shopping habits were different, too. Most families shopped multiple times per week rather than doing one massive haul. Why? Refrigerators were smaller, and freezers were practically non-existent in many homes. This meant fresher food, but also more frequent trips to the store. It was common to see housewives, and yes, it was primarily women doing the shopping back then, stopping by the grocery store 3 or 4 times a week. The checkout experience was charmingly inefficient by today's standards. No scanners, no self-checkout machines, no rewards cards. The cashier would ring up each item individually on a mechanical register, often calling out prices as they went. They'd pack your groceries in paper bags, and if you were lucky, a young bag boy would carry them to your car. Payment was almost always cash, with checks being a secondary option. Credit cards? Those were still a novelty reserved for the wealthy. One of the most fascinating aspects of mid-century grocery shopping was the prevalence of loss leaders and promotional gimmicks. Stores would sell certain items at or below cost just to get customers through the door. Weekly specials were events people planned around. And let's not forget about trading stamps, those green stamps and S&H stamps that shoppers collected religiously to redeem for household goods and appliances. So, what's the takeaway from this nostalgic journey down the grocery aisle? Mid-century shopping wasn't just about lower prices. It was about a completely different economic reality, slower pace of life, and stronger community connections. While we can't turn back the clock on inflation, understanding how our grandparents stretched their dollars reminds us that sometimes simpler really was better. The next time you're at the store swiping your card for a $100 grocery run, take a moment to imagine what that same money could have bought in 1955. It's not just vintage nostalgia, it's a fascinating glimpse into how dramatically our relationship with food, shopping, and money has transformed. Now that we've explored the basics of mid-century grocery shopping, let's dig deeper into the strategies and secrets that made housewives of the 1950s and 60s absolute masters of budget management. These weren't just shoppers, they were financial wizards, armed with coupons, calendars, and an encyclopedic knowledge of weekly sales cycles. The art of meal planning in the mid-century era was something else entirely. Women would sit down every Sunday with the weekly newspaper, scissors in hand, carefully clipping coupons and circling sale items. This wasn't a casual 5-minute activity, it was a strategic planning session. They'd map out every single meal for the week based on what was on sale, what was in season, and what they already had in the pantry. Waste simply wasn't an option when you were feeding a family on $15 to $20 a week. Coupon culture back then was far more sophisticated than today's digital discount codes. Manufacturers would place coupons directly in magazines, newspapers, and even inside product packages. But here's what made it different. The savings were proportionally massive. A 10-cent coupon on a 40-cent item represented a 25% discount. Stores would also double coupons on specific days, and savvy shoppers would time their trips accordingly. Some women maintained elaborate coupon organizers, categorized by product type and expiration date. It was a skill passed down from mother to daughter, like a cherished family recipe. Seasonal shopping was another crucial element of vintage budget magic. Before global supply chains made strawberries available year-round, people ate seasonally by necessity, and their wallets thanked them for it. Summer meant canning and preserving fruits and vegetables when they were abundant and cheap. Tomatoes, peaches, green beans, and pickles would be preserved in mason jars, lining basement shelves like edible insurance policies against winter's higher prices. A family that put up 200 jars in August could save 30 to 40% on their winter grocery bills. The relationship between homemakers and store managers was surprisingly collaborative. Regular customers weren't just faces in the crowd, they were valued relationships. A good grocer would set aside choice cuts of meat for his best customers, alert them when managers' specials were coming, and sometimes even extend informal credit during tough times. This wasn't corporate policy, it was community. When your grocer lived 3 streets over and attended the same church, customer service meant something entirely different. Let's talk about the phenomena of house brands and bulk buying before it became trendy. Store brands in the 1950s weren't seen as inferior knockoffs. They were smart alternatives that delivered the same quality at lower prices. Chains like A&P, Safeway, and Kroger developed their own labels, and smart shoppers knew these products often came from the same factories as name brands. Buying the store brand wasn't embarrassing, it was clever. And bulk buy-in? Families would pool resources, purchase whole cases of canned goods at wholesale prices, and divide them up. This communal shopping approach built neighborhood bonds while stretching dollars even further. The introduction of frozen foods revolutionized mid-century shopping in ways we take for granted now. When Clarence Birdseye perfected flash freezing technology in the 1930s, it took until the 1950s for frozen foods to really take off in American homes. Suddenly, you could buy vegetables out of season at reasonable prices. TV dinners, introduced by Swanson in 1953, promised convenience for less than $1. For working mothers just entering the workforce in larger numbers, these innovations weren't just time savers, they were budget extenders that didn't require preserving skills or extra preparation time. Brand loyalty programs in that era put today's rewards cards to shame in terms of tangible value. Remember those trading stamps we mentioned earlier? Let's dive deeper. S&H Green stamps, started in 1896 but peaking in the 1960s, were given at a rate of about 10 stamps per dollar spent. Families would paste them into books, and a completed book might be worth $2 to $3 in merchandise. At peak popularity, the S&H catalog was the largest publication in America, and the company issued 3 times as many stamps as the U.S. Postal Service. Women could furnish entire homes, one grocery trip at a time. It was gamification before anyone knew what that word meant. Advertising played a fascinating psychological role, too. Companies like Betty Crocker and Pillsbury weren't just selling products, they were selling lifestyle promises. Recipe booklets, cooking shows, and in-store demonstrations taught women how to maximize every purchase. A box of cake mix wasn't just flour and sugar, it was family togetherness, modern sophistication, and smart homemaking, all in one convenient package. The messaging was clear. Being budget conscious wasn't about deprivation, it was about being a skilled, modern homemaker. As we move forward in our journey through vintage grocery magic, you'll see how these mid-century strategies evolved through the turbulent economic changes of the 1970s, and what lessons we can still apply today. The foundation was laid in these golden years, a combination of personal relationships, strategic planning, and community cooperation that made every dollar work harder than we can imagine in our convenience-driven modern world. The golden age of grocery shopping couldn't last forever. As we entered the 1970s, everything changed. Oil embargoes, inflation, and economic uncertainty shattered the comfortable predictability of mid-century shopping. But here's the remarkable thing. Those vintage budget strategies didn't just survive, they evolved and became even more crucial. The 1970s brought what economists call stagflation. Rising prices combined with economic stagnation. Suddenly, that gallon of milk that cost 82 cents in 1950 jumped to over $1.50. Ground beef doubled in price. Families who had grown comfortable with abundant grocery budgets found themselves scrambling to adapt. But those who remembered or practiced the old ways, they weathered the storm far better than those who'd become dependent on convenience. This era saw the rise of the ultimate budget shopper's paradise, the warehouse club. While Sam's Club and Costco wouldn't arrive until the 80s, their predecessors started appearing in the 70s. These no-frills operations stripped away all the personal service and ambiance of traditional grocery stores, replacing them with concrete floors, industrial shelving, and rock-bottom prices. It was mid-century bulk buying taken to an extreme, and budget-conscious families embraced it wholeheartedly. Generic products exploded onto the scene during this period. We're not talking about store brands with nice packaging. These were literally labeled beer, corn, or macaroni and cheese in plain black letters on white packaging. They were 30 to 40% cheaper than name brands, and while the quality varied, millions of families made them pantry staples. It was the no-nonsense spirit of Depression-era shopping making a comeback for a new generation. But perhaps the most important development was the growing awareness of unit pricing. Before the 1970s, comparing the cost per ounce or per pound required mental math most shoppers didn't want to do. Consumer advocacy movements pushed for mandatory unit pricing labels, and suddenly, shoppers had a powerful tool to identify true value. That jumbo-sized box that looked like a deal? Unit pricing revealed it sometimes cost more per ounce than the regular size. Knowledge became power, and power saved money. The mid-century lessons about gardening and preserving came roaring back, too. Victory gardens from World War II had declined in the prosperous 1950s and 60s, but the 1970s saw a massive resurgence in home gardening. People realized that growing tomatoes, lettuce, and herbs wasn't just about saving money, it was about food security and independence. The skills Grandma had tried to teach suddenly seemed incredibly relevant again. So what can we take from this entire journey through vintage grocery magic and apply to our modern grocery trips? More than you might think. First, meal planning is still the foundation of budget success. Those Sunday planning sessions with sale flyers, they work just as well with digital apps and online circulars. Planning meals around sales and seasonal produce can still cut your grocery bill by 25 to 30%. Second, understand the psychology of modern grocery stores. Just like mid-century grocers knew their customers, today's supermarkets know you, maybe too well. They're designed to make you spend more, with essentials placed far apart, impulse items at checkout, and end cap displays that seem like deals but often aren't. Shop with a list, stick to it, and you're channeling that disciplined mid-century shopper mentality. Third, store brands are better than ever. Today's generic products are often identical to name brands manufactured in the same facilities with different labels. That stigma from buying store brands, it's outdated thinking. Smart shoppers know that choosing the store brand on staples can save 30% or more annually. Fourth, buying in season and preserving still works. You don't need 200 mason jars in your basement, but buying produce at peak season and freezing it yourself costs a fraction of buying pre-frozen vegetables year-round. A small chest freezer can pay for itself in less than a year. And finally, community matters. Join or start a buying club with neighbors. Share bulk purchases. Exchange coupons and sale information. That collaborative spirit that defined mid-century shopping isn't obsolete. It's just waiting to be revived. The mid-century grocery shopper wasn't lucky to have lower prices. They were skilled at maximizing value in their economic reality, just as we must be in ours. The dollars and cents have changed, but the principles haven't. Strategic planning, seasonal awareness, quality relationships, and smart substitutions still create budget magic. The real question is, are you ready to bring some of that vintage wisdom into your modern grocery routine? Because these time-tested strategies aren't just nostalgia, they're your secret weapon against today's inflated prices. If you found these vintage budget secrets valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more money-saving strategies from the past that still work today. Drop a comment and tell me what's one old-school shopping habit you'd like to bring back. Let's keep this conversation going, and remember, smart shopping never goes out of style. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.